There we go. And we're admitting all. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us and welcome to the panel discussion, The Impact of AI on Cybersecurity. I am Dr. Bird, Assistant Dean in the College of Computing. We are excited to have you with us. And because it is 12:45, we will jump right in, but let me introduce my esteemed colleague, Dr. Steve Rubinow. He will lead this discussion. He will spend time talking to our PhD candidates across various areas, and I will let him tell you more about himself.
Okay, thank you very much, Erica. And I'm switching screens back and forth, so there'll be a little bit of a time delay. So I'm very happy to be here with Erica and our panelists, and of course all you participants. I'm an associate teaching professor here at the university. I've been here a couple of years in the College of Computing, more specifically in the Department of Information Technology and Management. And just by way of background, before I started teaching, for many years, I worked in the corporate sector and I had responsibility for cybersecurity in many of the jobs I did. So this is not an unfamiliar topic to me, and I'm always happy to discuss it because, as you all know in the audience, it seems to change every day, sometimes for the better, sometimes not so good. That's part of the challenge of this topic. And so without any further ado, let me turn to our panelists. And please introduce yourself one at a time. You can go in any particular order. And tell us a little bit, like a couple of sentences about why you think this topic is important. And then we'll go to the questions. We have some questions that we prepared beforehand. And then many of you folks in the audience, you sent us questions that you'd like to have addressed. And we'll get to as many of them as we can. Who would like to go first?
I guess I could start first. Hi, I'm Maria Soto. I'm a PhD candidate for information technology at Illinois Tech. I've actually been here for 6.5 years now. I did my co-terminal here, so I got my bachelor's in information technology and management and my master's in cyber forensics and security. And honestly, the impact of AI is really a conversation that has really been interesting me, especially because I'm interested in critical infrastructure. That's kind of what I'm trying to base my research on. And it's really interesting seeing how AI is impacting simulations and other things so that we're not harming the infrastructure that we currently have, and being able to see the best ways to, do risk management without causing any harm.
Thank you, Maria.
I think I can begin then be the next one. Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Puya Pakshad. I'm a PhD student in information technology here in Chicago. My major is information technology, and I'm a student of the ITM department. So my research focuses on vulnerability discovery and malware detection. And I'm really passionate about exploring how the AI's models can help for, enhancing the cybersecurity, specifically by detecting the software bugs and malwares inside the codes. And I'm really excited to join today's discussion and share my insight with you. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. Hi, I'm Benjamin. I'm a fourth-year PhD student here at the school. My primary focus in research is in machine learning privacy and security, but less so on the how you apply machine learning models or AI to security, rather than the privacy and security issues revolving around the models themselves, so that how the models themselves can be vulnerable to attacks. So that's also a new area as these models gets, in the past few years, we got those generative models. Well, those models now have security issues that they can be broken. So those are also new issues that I'm looking at.
Great, thank you. Thank you. Thanks. I can get started with the first question as I'm flipping my screens here. And here's, some of you may have seen this, and this is always timely. It is always interesting to see what the latest news is on this topic. And just a few days ago, some of you may have seen this, Google's Threat Intelligence Group published a research report very much relevant to what we're talking about today, although we did not talk to each other. So it's just indicative of the landscape. and they brought up the issue of bad actors using AI in cybersecurity. We all can talk about what the good actors will do, and the panelists will touch on that. But we always knew that the productivity boost that us good actors get from AI tools in cybersecurity, bad actors have that productivity boost. But this particular report that came from Google went beyond their productivity boost for known hacking methods and said that AI is giving the bad actors novel ways of creating exploits. Just what we wanted to hear, right? It makes our jobs very relevant, but it's not welcome news. So with that, let me start with our first question. And this is kind of an overview. And again, whoever wants to, all of you or any one of you, please, you're welcome to respond. How is AI currently being used to enhance cybersecurity defenses? And what are the most promising applications of that?
I can answer to this question as a first one. So I would say that these days AI is really using every different layer of the cybersecurity, from detecting the anomalies in network traffic to identifying the phishing and malwares in real time. So it means that any different things, that for example, malware detections or anomaly behaviors, AI is helping. For the best promising thing is that it helps for training the large amount of the data in a short time. It means that it has a so high speeds for training this data and be able to detect the anomalies, the unusual or abnormal user behaviors. And so that's why it would be so promising for the future, that the AI is not for only the future. Right now is also using it's using for and for defense side and of the cybersecurity to make everything, to make the models and the techniques smarter than the past. So yeah, it's my insight about it.
Anyone else want to talk to this? Or I can go to the next question. Okay, so let me go on to the next question, because they're very much related. And this is one I think about all the time, and I'm sure you do as well. As much as Abuyab said just a second ago, we've got a lot of power at our fingertips with these tools. But here's the next question. How do they balance speed and accuracy? We all know about hallucinations and all that sort of stuff when you're talking about large language models and Gen AI. And so what are the risks of using these tools but getting false positives or false negatives?
Yeah, I could definitely talk about this. So when it comes to just speed and accuracy, they use machine learning to analyze like vast amounts of data for, anomalies, correlated threats, but they're also trying to reduce false positives. However, that's not always possible, but they try to continuously learn. So whatever they do, that data is not just like stored away. It's used to retrain themselves so that they can adapt and evolve, so that there's just become more faster and more accurate as they continue working. They also just use techniques such as like behavioral analysis to spot unusual activities. However, I don't believe that AI can truly not have any risks. There's always going to be the risk of false positives and negatives. And that's where humans come in, where they can go through the AI powered tools and check for false positives and negatives, because without the analysts, how can we validate? Even though AI could validate themselves, there's still the risk that things will go through the cracks. So it's always just best to have a human, a cybersecurity analyst there to double check, add knowledge, and just overall make the final decision, so that we have less fear of false positives and negatives.
So, and Maria, let me build on that. And again, Benjamin and Priya, please, you can answer this too. So one of our favorite buzzwords, the last, it'll change tomorrow, agentic AI, right? Letting the system have more power than maybe would have a year ago. And so if on the one hand, people are saying the systems are more powerful, we can give them agency, and maybe they can do things on our behalf, and maybe the human in the loop is less needed. I don't want to say zero, because I don't believe that, but let's say that we have more confidence. So what do you think is the balance there, where we give the systems more power so they can do things faster, they can catch things sooner, as opposed to we're relaxing our safeguards a little bit too much? Where do you think the right balance is there?
Yeah, well, here's the thing. You're asking a person who's really interested in human factors. I love learning about the human error, how humans and always develop an error. Let it be they didn't get enough sleep and they put in the wrong password or allow someone in that they shouldn't. I believe that the same concept of human factors can be implemented to AI because it was human generated. It was created by human. So I always feel that, yes, we can give it more power, but ultimately, I still believe that there's a need for humans to still validate and double check, especially when it comes to major decisions. Maybe more smaller things that are quickly automated. I generally feel that, yeah, AI can take a handle, but like really big, impactful decisions should really go still through a human just to validate and, you know, make the final decision.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree. It's
Yeah,
go
Benjamin, you
ahead.
go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to add something technically about that. That's if we want to have the AI-based tools that would be balanced between the speed and the accuracy. So I think one of the most important thing is that we have to care, technically, we have to care about the algorithms we want to use for example, for the large language models, how we want to fine tune it. For example, one of the so easy thing that every guy, for example, I'm pretty much the Benjamin knows about for example, LoRa algorithms. It will, optimizing because the large language models has a the 100 billion million parameters, and so if he wants to make a fine tuning that have the speed and the accuracy, it depends on how we want to configure the models, especially the AI models. That's Benjamin, go ahead.
Yeah, I would say in general it's a very vast umbrella when we're talking about how much power we gave AI. It's a very general term, and I would say the answer would be very highly task dependent. One example I'll give is USPS. USPS sorts letters. When you write a letter, you write the address on the letter, you mail it. They sort it using machine learning, recognizing what address you're written. 20 something years ago, the automation rate was about 5% to 10%. Current day, I believe, 2 years ago, I think I heard the status was somewhere between 95 to 99% is automated. And some people like me have terrible handwriting. The machine can't recognize. They have an actual person try to read it and sort it. So we have seen the progress of the same task is doing the same thing, and we're giving the AI more power. And we don't see random letters getting sorted to the wrong place all the time. And we trust it a lot more than before. So this is the balance that you find as time goes on. The answer for a task this year is going to be a different answer next year. So this is evolving landscape, let's just say.
And I want to say, and I'm looking at the questions again submitted by the participants, and one of them, and I'm saying this with a smile on my face, but it's very relevant to your comments just now. The question verbatim was, "How long until the Terminators kill us all?" Which is another way of saying, in cyberspeak, how much autonomy should we give these systems in critical decisions? And I think all three of you have spoken to that. I think we have some time left before Hollywood scenarios swamp us, and I hope we're all right in that. So let me switch gears for a second. I'm going to jump around a little bit, but this is something that I don't think we talk enough about. Not we. I'm sure we're very conscious of it. I think that the general community doesn't talk about, and that's ethics, privacy, legal challenges. In technology, and I've been doing this for a long time, we tend to push the technology as fast as we can, and we let that stuff I just mentioned catch up, and then we have a gap when that happens, and sometimes it's not the best gap. So here's the broad level question. What ethical challenges arise from using AI in cybersecurity, especially when it comes to surveillance, data privacy, and autonomous decision making?
Yeah, I can.
And then, of course, I'm sorry, Marie. And then the
Okay.
follow-up question is going to be, and what can we do about it? So please go ahead.
No, I can. Yeah, definitely with ethical challenges, especially surveillance that I've just come to see is just biases. Biases is just a huge concern with anything that we do, and just the AI taking it and just running with it. I definitely think also just with general legal, it's really hard to stay in the loop. If you look up any of the cybersecurity laws or regulations that currently exist, we're not very up to date compared to what we have for just our standard human problems. And honestly, it's just more of having a better understanding of, hey, we have a lot of technical knowledge. How can we implement that and put it into more layman's terms to turn that into policy and regulations that can be used to help with this? Because we're never going to fully catch up, but putting in some regulations and trying to help out as best as we can via policies is really important, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I'll add to that a little bit. I think with these a lot of the policy making in these new tech landscape, we can also observe not only tech but finance as well are somewhat reactionary, right? Something blows up, we try to fix it in the next 5 years, kind of thing. It's now not always great, and of course there's a balance to it. And the great thing is there are ways, I think, around the world, people, countries, governments, governing entities are trying to try different approaches, right? As we can see, EU has a much stricter surveillance law, much more stricter privacy law as throughout the whole EU, data control, AI use, and we can learn from it, right? We can learn from how EU does it and what goes right, what goes wrong, as this country can learn from it. And some places try to do it at a local level, try to work with some companies, some states, try to do kind of a sandbox play, see how this goes and how we can generalize it. A lot of policies that we have throughout the entire nation are started in one state or one county or one city. So those are small steps we can take, before applying a whole umbrella over the entire country, over the entire population. You can see, test around. We still have time to do that.
Exactly.
Yeah, this is a topic, again, it's constantly evolving. And when it comes to the government getting, well, as we all know, the industry, the big tech industry, especially in the topics we're talking about, are self-regulated, which is,
Yeah.
is a little bit of a contradictory term. And when the government regulates, typically they overdo it because they want to dot the I's and cross the T's, and then it becomes too restrictive. Finding the middle ground is very, very hard. And you know what the response is from the big tech companies and the people that purvey these tools is they're going to say, please don't slow us down, because it's going to be anti-competitive. And those nation states who are not our best friends in the world, they're not encumbered by these rules, and they will just run right ahead of us, and that's not good for us. And so the government has to strike this. And Benjamin says, because the federal government has not been that proactive in doing this, individual states are saying, wait a second, maybe we should try something. But if you have 50 different states, you don't want to have 50 different regulations. That's going to get very confusing. So it's quite a challenge to figure it out. And also in Europe, as Benjamin also pointed out, the Europeans have more stringent regulations than we have in the United States at the current time. But big tech is pushing against those too in Europe, saying you're tying us up. These regulations are too hard. You have to loosen them a bit. So we'll see what happens. But we all have individual decisions we can make with regard to ethics and privacy, and make sure that the organizations we work in and work with try and get them to do the right thing, which is not always easy to do. So let's see. Let me go back here. So let's go to the dark side for a second. We try and keep it on the positive uses of it, but in what ways are cyber criminals leveraging AI? And how can organizations stay ahead of these evolving threats?
I will speak a little bit on my personal experience. So one thing I've noticed in my personal life is that phishing attacks, social engineering type of cyber attacks are are much better in terms of their effectiveness than before. 10 years ago, there was this fake cheap looking email telling you send me money, right? Now they actually get very similar. They can adapt to who they're sending to, what email is receiving them, as to say they're sending it to this particular company. Say this guy works for Coca-Cola. They're targeting all Coca-Cola employees. Well, they can customize to what company's service Coca-Cola uses and use their tone, use their email pretend, and they can custom at this much more granular personal level. And this is a much much more dangerous, I think, on a day-to-day basis. And I experienced this quite a lot in the past few years. I think number one thing for these companies to do, and a lot of companies are doing it, is really training. It's a human factor training. Like tell your employee what steps you can take to prevent it. For example, you see a link, well, don't just read the link text. No, right click, see where this is going to, right? Are there any weird characters in ASCII that's looking like an O but not an O, something like that. So those trainings for the regular employees for these companies will be very important and very effective, I think.
Yes, and also if I want to add something to your Benjamin sentences, so yeah, the attackers are also getting so creative once they can use the AIs, and they will be so smarter than finding the vulnerabilities faster than, and also writing the better malware codes, to create the malware codes to attack into the system, exploit the vulnerabilities, or running the bad codes, and have a business impacts and technical impacts, unfortunately, for any organizations. So that's the thing that the AI could be. That's the thing that the attacker, I'm mentioning, that they can use the AIs, because once we have something on the defense side, so attackers also can use these techniques to have a more complicated and complex attacks to this targeted. And the things that the organization have to do is that keep update their algorithms, their machine learning model, any AI technique that they are using for keeping robust their defense models and tools.
And I was going to ask, and Maria, I'll direct this to you because of your human factors emphasis. And one of the comments we had in the chat was about information awareness training, which is really, really important. We all go through it, and we do it on a regular basis. And all of us in the cybersecurity world, I'll generalize, but I'm speaking from my own experience. We wake up every day wondering what's the new threat of the day and how nervous should we be about it. But the average employee or student, a member of an organization, the further they get away from an event, the more their guard relaxes. It's like, nothing happened in the last 90 days, so probably nothing's going to happen tomorrow. And so, and we can have information awareness programs, but if there's no noise, people say they start to become less attuned to the threat because because nothing's happened recently. Maria or anybody, what can we do from a human factor standpoint to make sure that the weakest link, any person in an organization who might fall victim to one of these things because they don't remember their training, they kind of were more casual about it because they don't see anything happening around them. What can we do to raise that level of attentiveness without going overboard?
Yeah. So for me, whenever I think of this, I always think of how like my families have always worked as like cleaning ladies, or they worked in some like nothing technical, but they worked in the building where a lot of things happen. And my mom will fall for any scam that you see on the internet. She saw a deep fake of her favorite newscaster and be like, he needs our help. He needs us to help support him. And I'm like, Mom, I don't know how to explain this to you, but this isn't real. But I definitely will say whenever I am unsure of things, I always refer back to the human factors analysis and classification system, or HFACS. I absolutely love it. It honestly makes me feel more aware. And I feel like because I have friends who are not in the technical spaces, I have friends who are nurses, I have friends who are in just a lot of different spaces. And I've told them about like this system. And every time I tell them, they're like, oh, that makes sense. I can apply that to my real job. For example, let's say one of them forgets to properly clock in, or forgot to bring in their badge that day, and they left it somewhere where they don't even remember where they left it. And somebody were to find it, and maybe security was relaxed that day. Like, there are a lot of things that they need to consider. I like telling them about like the Swiss cheese idea of like, hey, if all of these things were to align, you can cause the biggest problem just because you decided today I'm too lazy to find where my badge is. So I like really telling them like, hey, apply this to your real life. Like, think of it in like a real life factor, and really try to think about it, like, okay, if I were to do this, how much damage can I do? And I feel like that's the best way to like maneuver it for people who aren't really in the technical space. Like, okay, if I were really to do this, what is the probability of me causing such a big issue? And even the smallest probability usually scares them enough to like start having a better routine. At least that's what I've noticed with my friends and families, that I've tried to help them not fall for scams and try to be more attentive at their jobs.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then I think you touched on this as well. There's the old saying in the cybersecurity business, it's not a question of if you get hacked, it's when you get hacked. And since we believe that, because it's impossible to guarantee 100% that you're secure, having a plan or an action plan ready when it happens, as opposed to figuring it out in the heat of the moment, which of course never goes well. And so we have to be prepared for when these events happen. We never have to use the plan, but at least if we do, we're prepared. So, and then let me take it up a level. And Benjamin talked about phishing that he's seen. As the technology get more sophisticated, maybe one of you already mentioned this, and when we get deepfakes, where we can get messages from people that look exactly like people that we think we know, with voices that we think we recognize, and it just gets more sophisticated all the time. How do we combat those other than saying, you know what, I'm not sure if this is a deepfake or not. I'm not going to take any instructions from you unless you're standing in front of me and I'm sure it's you. What do you think we can do to help not eliminate that, but mitigate that threat?
Yeah, I think this goes hand in hand with what we talked about earlier. One thing I have seen in practice, in real life, both was I've seen research group work with police department on this, and also I've seen companies hiring consulting companies to do exactly this, would be scenario training. So rather than just going through kind of what we, school asks us to do, those trainings, they actually, for example, a company, the company hires, say, a contractor company to do those phishing emails. So they actually send out phishing emails to the employees, and those employees who are vulnerable, who actually click on it, they know, and they can talk to those employees, target those employees, and tell them, "Hey, you did this. If this were real, what could have happened?" And kind of this making this thing real, right? This would be more effective than just asking everyone to look at, one paragraph or look at a video talking about this. So this is something I believe companies and groups can do to enhance, I think, this aspects of awareness for people who don't work with this, who don't think about it like us, right? So I think this is one step towards that.
Well, Benjamin, let me ask you this question, and then this again would go to everybody as well. Have you, in the recent past, attended a Zoom meeting, not unlike this one, or Microsoft Teams meeting, or name your favorite collaboration tool, and you suspected even for a second, I don't think it's happened, that one of the participants in the meeting is not real, and it's a plant, the person looks familiar, they sound familiar, but they're not really who they say they are. I maybe haven't experienced this firsthand, but have you heard of stories where that's been happening, and techniques that people can use to discern whether everyone in a virtual meeting like this is really who they say they are?
I personally haven't experienced that. I think it's not as prevalent today as it might be, and especially because is it would take a lot of resources for the attacker to do that, right? This is not an easy social engineering. So they would focus on more sensitive areas rather than meetings I would be in. So I haven't experienced that firsthand, but I have heard of it. To be honest, it's different people have different, I guess, blind spots to it, right? Say if I notice, hey, this is weird, I don't know this guy talks weird. Well, somebody else might not think that. So that's something that has to be a more targeted training towards a particular group, because people have different reactions or understandings of such potential threats.
Anybody else want to offer an
Yeah.
opinion on this scenario?
I definitely, when I think of this, I think of this more of in like a university setting, just because I've been here for 7 years. So of course I usually think of it this way. But like if President Raj called my number, because IIT does have my phone number,
Uh-huh.
and like they're like, we need your login credentials, something's going wrong. Like I would freak out, and I'd be like, I don't know if I trust this. But also they're at least from like thinking from like my mom, my sister, somebody like if somebody told them, hey, I am this important person before, I've never heard this person's voice, I've never really gotten their number before, but they have access to my phone number, I would be very stressed. And when I think of it that way, I always try to I'm willing to, because I was in theater, I'm always willing to like work on the fly. I'll always be like, hey, I'm so sorry. Right now I'm driving. I'm probably sitting at my desk. I'm driving right now. Give me a moment. Let me, is this a good number to call you back? And if they give me the same number that they're calling from, I can quickly message one of my professors or somebody that I know, or really quickly call, like for example, Kayla. Kayla is an amazing resource that I in the ITM department. We could call her and be like, hey, do you recognize this phone number? Is this legit? Because I don't know who this person is. And they're saying that they're President Raj. At least that's how I've done it. And that's what I've done with my mom. She's like, hey, this person says they're your Thea, but this isn't the number she usually calls from. What should I do? And I usually try to help her mitigate. But I always feel like as long as people are aware, like, hey, you can always ask for help. You can always kind of lie and be like, hey, in this moment, I can't do something. Give me a moment. Can I call back to this number? And most people, if they say, no, you can't call back, it's usually a little bit more, you should be a little bit more precautious. And that's usually what I've done for like my mom and my sister, just because I'm their tech person, their go-to tech person. So I'm always there to try to help. So I usually try to find little ways of being like, hey, if you don't know this person, please call me. Just ask me real quick.
So Maria, what you're saying is you're the family CISO.
Yeah, I am.
That's good. Every family should have a CISO. And you know what? And so let me build on that for a second. So you talked about, Raj has your phone number, and this goes back to the ethics and the privacy issue.
Yeah.
So we know that these models, whether they're large language models or more traditional machine learning methods, we all know and we've already mentioned it takes a ton of data to train them. And a lot of that data is yours and my personal data. And so, none of us really know unless we investigate to what extent, how much of our personal data is being used and who's using it and how they're using it. So what do you think the right approach here, again, as a cybersecurity practitioner, is you want to have the best results in the tools you're using, which require a lot of data, but you also don't want to cross the line, or at least you want to let the people affected, folks, we have your data and this is the way we're going to use it, opt in or opt out. What do you think the best approach is for a practitioner to make sure they use the data properly?
Always, always, always be transparent. That's like main importance, because honestly, yes, our data is being used almost everywhere. You Google something, they're gonna take that information of like, oh, this person who's roughly 24 years old is interested in this topic. Are other 24 years old interested in this topic? And even though, yes, our data is privatized, it's never fully not going to be connected back to you. There's always going to be some way. And I always like knowing that companies are very transparent with me. Like, hey, this is how we're using it. This is how we're making it private. If you agree with it, you can continue. If you don't agree with it, we understand. And I feel like just always being transparent. A company should always, like, even our university, they should be transparent. Everyone should be. And if they're not transparent, be a little weary.
Yeah, I'll add to that. So in the past few years, because this is kind of exactly what I work on, right? In the past few years, these generation models with large amount of data, thousands, millions of rows of data for training, they're very black boxy, right? It's hard to tell, hey, if this data was used unless they disclose it. So this is really a two-part thing. One part is regulation, right? EU, I think, is like I mentioned, is more strict on this. For example, regulation could say, hey, if you have a model, you train, you must disclose what kind of data, how you acquire them, and whatnot. And this kind of exists at some extent at some places, but companies still try to hide it. They're big enough that they're not afraid of lawsuits. They still try to hide it. I believe in the past few years, if you follow this kind of news, there are examples where this kind of got out of hand and got exposed. And there are ways we could try to identify it, such as membership inference attack on the model, data extraction, or similar stuff, to watermarking and whatnot. This is exactly what some people, myself included, kind of work in this area to do. What needs to happen is regulators need to have regulation, and then under these regulations, utilize these newly developed tools to kind of enforce it, to actually poke at these models and say, hey, we are the regulator, we're looking at your model, we tested, you failed this test, we're seeing, this flag, you're flagged to be using more data than you claim you are, and there needs to be a punishment. There needs to be a way to actually hold these companies accountable, either harder than slap on the wrist, to make sure they're less incentivized to bypass these measures.
Yeah, and you know what? And going to information awareness and the use of the data, and it's an old cliche, but unfortunately it's with us. So in terms of transparency, every company that's on the web will say, especially if you're a new customer, so to speak, they'll say, here's our terms of service. Everything we're going to do with your data, our lawyers have expressed in the best possible way. So read it very carefully. And if you're not a lawyer, I hope you understand what you're signing up for. And as we all know, most people click through it because they say, I didn't understand it. I'm not going to hire a lawyer to interpret it for me. What could go wrong? And the internet is forever. And so that's a challenge for us to try and figure that out. And by the way, also, and this is a question that I encountered in the private sector not that long ago. If we use a customer, whether it's an individual like you and I, or a corporate customer for a service we're selling, and we use their data to train our models to benefit the customer, and then the customer says, by the way, for all kinds of reasons, I don't want to do business with you anymore. I found a better supplier. I want to take my data out of your model. I think not that many contracts have provisions for that. And what does the company do? Say, okay, we have to retrain all our models without that data in it. When we opt out of something online, do they retrain the models and get rid of all our data that we've been supplying them for the last few years? Not likely. So that's an interesting challenge as well. I don't know if any of you have encountered saying, I don't want you to use my data anymore. Not only am I not going to give you data, but I want you to pull it out of the already trained models because I don't want any trace of it in what you're doing.
Yeah, this is definitely a difficult topic because EU allows you to request internet companies to remove your data, but that's not really from training. That's more so from just Google search or public records, right?
Mm-hmm.
So depending on the local law applied, it could work differently. But currently, especially when the training process is so not transparent, right? It's hard to tell if you have a model, well, if this particular image or data point was included or not. It's very difficult to tell overall.
Mm-hmm.
There are people who are studying the topic of unlearning. So when you have a model, you have these data that used in training. You can do ways to kind of like fine tuning to learn additional stuff. You can unlearn additional stuff. So this would be a technique that could be leveraged under this, be it regulation enforcement or company out of goodwill, which probably won't happen, scenario. So we have people studying and trying to invent these tools, and regulation really needs to kind of the overall theme, know how to leverage these tools properly, I think.
Mm-hmm. Any other comments, Maria or Priya? If not, then I'm going to switch gears to the topic I know every listener wants to hear about. How do you plot a course in your career? You folks are earlier in your career. It's given that it's almost not an exaggeration, things seem to change every single day. How do you, and we can't change our careers every single day. So what's the best advice you can give to folks, especially, focus on cybersecurity, but it applies to technology in general. What advice can you give to folks as to how, in an uncertain and ever-changing world, they can plot a course that they can follow, that they won't have to re-examine every quarter to see if it's still valid? What do you think makes sense?
Excuse me, about the courses that the students can learn, you mean?
Or just the general career trajectory. I'm going to learn this. I'm going to get a job doing this. This is what I'm studying for. This is what I'm preparing for. And then again, in one scenario, it takes you 4 years to get there. And then when you get there, the job has disappeared or changed radically, and they say it's been replaced by this job. Too bad you didn't prepare for it. Again, I'm making up
Yeah.
scenarios, but how do you stay on top of things when you have to maybe be pivoting very often?
Yes, so I would say that I think that for the beginners or the people that they wants to becomes to work on the cybersecurity with intersection with the AIs, three different branches I can suggest about that. First, knows about the cybersecurity techniques like penetration testing, ethical hacking, or malware analysis, vulnerability analysis, mobile threat analysis, and some stuff like that every different skills could be help them to improve their skills about the cybersecurity, a fundamental of the cybersecurity. I would recommend that one of the good institute about these things is about the SANS Institute, which is one of the popular institutions about the cybersecurity, which learns about have a different roadmap at the course that the learner can learns about that, or they can also register in IIT Illinois Tech. I believe that we have a lots of good roadmap courses in the online Coursera and also in-person courses that the people can come and register for different periods of the course periods. And so another branch would be, I think that about the machine learning and about the AIs, machine learning. They need to know about the machine learning, deep learning, how many different algorithms we have, what is the clustering, classification techniques, what is the supervised, unsupervised algorithms. And the last thing is that they need to improve their programming skills. However, these days that most of the people using the LLMs features like ChatGPT to using the code completion feature to write the code automatically. But I believe that every guy wants to write the codes and they need to manage it. And managing would be happen once you have the skills about how you can write the codes. The best suggestion and the easiest way is the Python programming language that can help you for training the model using the different algorithms that they already trained. They're already predefined libraries and some stuff like that. So as a wrap up, learning about the cybersecurity technical skills and machine learnings models, deep learning models, large language, and how you can fine tuning the large language or using the API services of them, and strengthening and improving the programming language skills. Yeah.
That's great. I think that's great
Thank you.
advice. Maria,
Yeah.
Benjamin, what do you think?
Yeah.
I'll add a little bit on top of that to, like you said, to stay on top of things, right? Things shift the general direction, the landscape, the entire industry shifts. But to stay on top of things, you really need to start out at the bottom, because no matter what wind blows on the top, the bottom, the infrastructure changes very slowly. We're using programming languages from decades ago, older than most of us in this room. Those things don't change. No matter what AI agents you use, what AI model you use for cybersecurity, I'll use cybersecurity as an example. Well, TCP protocol doesn't change. DNS server doesn't change. How all those things works is the same. That whatever you build on top of it needs to be grounded. So if you say, hey, I'm going into cybersecurity with AI, and you don't even know what TCP is. You don't even know how DNS server works. You don't even know what's the difference between different IP addresses you have. You have local IP address. You have one LAN. You have a local MAC address. What are those addresses? What do those things mean? What are those building components of the field? Those fundamentals are very important. You need to have an understanding of them, because say you ask an AI to write a program to help you defend your network. Well, you can't even understand one function of it. It's saying, hey, check for this, check for this. You don't even know if it's right or wrong. You at least need to be able to understand this code, understand, hey, this is missing, this is wrong, this is right. This understanding is far more important. And this understanding will not be devalued by the change of AI. These knowledge were important before AI, and these knowledge are still very valuable with AI, because with AI, well, you still need to go through these channels, those infrastructures.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Hey,
definitely.
please,
I
Maria.
agree with Benjamin. Like, the fundamentals are essential. Just understanding the fundamentals will always guide you. But also, if you are interested in a particular field, because we all are, we all have like I'm interested in human factors and critical infrastructure and other aspects. If you truly have an interest in a field and you really want to break into it, I highly recommend, if you know that we're here at IIT, a lot of our professors have worked in the fields and are very knowledgeable on what's going on, what's currently like important. You can always, at least here at IIT, you can always do independent study. You can work on a project with a professor that you know that they're very knowledgeable on a subject that you're interested in, and work with them, and they can help develop projects. I was very fortunate enough to go to Kosovo with Dr. Maurice Dawson. He took me to Kosovo, and I was actually able to apply what I learned in cybersecurity technologies and apply it to real world things, because I was working alongside the Kosovian government and a company called Three Folders, and we were trying to work like consultants and understand what are the needs, what are some vulnerabilities that general companies need help understanding. And if that's what you're interested in, you should really talk to the professors and really get a feel for what is needed, because they'll tell you, oh, these are the skills that I use. Maybe you should focus on these courses because those skills will be taught in those courses. And also, just for me, this is just a me thing. If you are an overthinker and you enjoy just making sure everything is right, understand incident response and disaster recovery, because no matter what, a disaster is going to occur, an incident's going to happen. Understanding the policies and how to implement them is crucial for any company. But at least that's just how I view it, because most students have been here for a while and might be on their last 2 years. I highly recommend, if you have the credits, do an independent study, work with some students.
You know, it's interesting, not that long after ChatGPT came out, it's been 3 years now, Pew Research did a poll of American workers across the country, and they said, how many of you think that AI will affect your profession? The vast majority said it will affect their profession. And then the next question is, how likely it is do you think it'll affect you in particular? And the vast majority said, it won't affect me. My job's secure. It'll affect everybody else. And those numbers don't add up. So, you know, it'll be interesting to see how this all plays out. So let me ask another question. And if you're, in terms of job titles, so if the three of you are pursuing academic pursuits, your job title is going to be very traditional. But assuming that you would like to go into industry, what job title would you be aspiring to? And then part two of that question is, we all like to talk about all the jobs that will be created that don't exist yet. What jobs do you think, you can just throw out imaginary job titles that however you think they make sense. What job titles do you think there will be in the future that don't exist today, that maybe a really forward-thinking student could say, it doesn't exist today, but in 5 years, I think that job's going to exist and I'm going to plot a course to get to it?
That's a really good question. I really got to think about this one.
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. I would say in my experience, I worked as a data analyst before I started my PhD here. And in my experience with that field, currently, not much has changed, to be honest. Especially when it comes to traditional larger companies, that just doesn't really change because, well, AIs don't do math. They are descendant of natural language processing. This process language as tokens. They process number as tokens, not as numbers. So when I have I have this project exactly that, say I want to ask for the company's revenue for the past week, and the exact number is, say, 470,000. Let's just random number, and the model tells you 470,000. You're like, hey, that's pretty good, but actually, as that's not good. Why? Because the actual number is 470,000 with some change, and that change gets thrown out. And sometimes it tells you 480,000. Well, that's technically wrong. And when you are in, say, for example, data analyst role, you actually need the real numbers. You can't let the models tell you a rough number, because rough numbers are used to read the report. They're not used to build a report. So that aspect does not change. And I know people who work in big tech in Spain for software engineering, which is much more closely related to the shift in industry. And what they have told me and what I experienced is it hasn't changed that much. Their workflow has changed. They can use models to help them write some pieces of code, snippets of code, but the actual workflow hasn't changed. You still go through the cycle, agile or whatnot, depending on the company. With human checking, that you build tests. Well, that the fundamental structure of these jobs hasn't changed in the past few years. The details of these jobs changed. When I write a program to do data analysis, I don't need to write every single line. I can write it to tell it to, hey, process data in this way. I check it. Now that particular action changed and that productivity changed, but this particular job cycle hasn't changed. Let's just say.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. Maria,
And
Pooya?
also, if I want just to
Mhm.
add one note to the Benjamin's sentence, the last sentence, it's also, I think that the traceability also Benjamin added, because we cannot make sure 100%, trust 100% to the LLMs or to ChatGPT, any other the large language models to complete the codes, and we think, okay, this code is exactly have the validation and the verification that we have expectation from the codes. So I mean that probably the code details have changed. Not only it's not easier than I think that just the shape of that it's changed. Yeah.
It's interesting, Pooya, and we mentioned earlier about human in the loop. Some of the job titles that I see projected for the future in cybersecurity and other technical fields are fancy names for human in the loop, like AI system validator, with a even fancier title, which is just old-fashioned human in the loop, but you want to give
Yeah.
it a fancier title. So yeah, maybe they'll be jobs that we know, they'll just be retitled. So Maria, what do you think about job titles?
Definitely. I got my master's in cybersecurity and forensics, and I have a real big passion for forensics. And yes, I could have AI help with looking through someone's hard drive, and that would be incredible. But if I were to do something similar to Sean Davis, one of our amazing adjunct professors, he um he is somebody who goes on and speaks on how he did all this work. And yes, he could potentially have AI do the work, but if he doesn't understand what's being done, how can he defend it in court? And I like policies and laws and regulations. So even though, yes, AI can be used and help in certain things for productivity, the true communication and using those skills of critical thinking, like those soft skills that are really needed that can't really be AI generated, are really important. And even though I think job titles, like Benjamin and Pooya were saying, even though job titles can change, it's still never going to really replace a human in certain aspects of soft skills. And just generally, I don't know how much I would trust AI to be in front of a lawyer and deal with legal pursuits. That's just me, at least.
Yeah,
Uh,
I think I have one caveat to add to that. I have a lot of people ask me, how job market is going to change with
mhm.
AI. And my short response to them is always, imagine you're doing your job and you're given a free kind of cheap intern to do a lot of the laborious parts, like write this function, write that. You don't really trust this intern, but you let it do some stuff and you check it. So imagine you just have some intern on the side helping you do the busy work. That's kind of the example I gave a lot of people.
Your three responses together are very wise and very pragmatic, having come from somebody who's been doing this for a bunch of years. Because I agree with you. In a serious business like we're talking about, like cybersecurity, you can't afford to rely too much on tools when they can be wrong, and then say, "I'm sorry, I made a mistake. It's not my fault." Yeah, that wouldn't be a good answer. So I tell people, if you're writing, and this is an exaggeration, if you're writing jingles for a greeting card, you can be wrong sometimes. It's okay. But if you're guarding the security perimeter inside and outside of your organization, you don't want to ever be wrong. And so it goes to all three of your point. You've got to know the fundamentals. You got to be an expert at what you're doing. And these AI tools will help you, but they're not going to replace you because you are much, I'll say, smarter than they are. And the other thing that I found through my experience is when you start to get out of bounds with these models, and you're starting to encounter experiences that they were never trained on, you as humans will do a much better job. It'll take you a while to do the computation. Of course, we're not as fast, but when you're dealing with the unknown, humans, in my experience, perform much better than machines that are or machine learning models that are out of their depth because they had never had this kind of training data before. So the two of you together, the machine and you guiding the machine into the right results and double and triple checking in critical situations, your posture is exactly what it should be. It's very nice to hear that. And it's very encouraging to people listening. It's like, what's the future going to hold? And you're saying, be expert in what you're doing, use the tools as you need to, but make sure you understand what you're doing and let the tools help you. Don't let the tools guide you too much. That's really good advice. So we have, let me say this, we have a few minutes left. And if there's anyone in the audience, I have not been looking at the chat, but if there's anyone in the audience that would be interested in adding a question or asking our panel, their thoughts on something else or to elaborate on something we've already said, this would be a good time to do it. Anyone? Well, we have a very attentive, but I think we probably answered all the questions, which is great.
Actually, somebody in the chat pointed out an interesting, something that's worth discussing, AI testifying in court, which I briefly brought up, but like thinking of at least like how that would work, because technically you can make a lot of different people in professions testify. How would AI work? That's a really interesting topic that I've never really thought about too much. Like I've thought about it like slightly, but I was just like, I'll keep it to like Law and Order and other people who are doing that to do their job. But honestly, could you get AI to testify? How credible would that be?
Yeah, well, that is a question, and we hear too many cases where people are too experts in their field. In this case, not cybersecurity, but lawyers and associated professions, where they're in a hurry, or the results look pretty good, or most of the results look pretty good, and then they go with it. And to Benjamin's earlier point, if the answer has to be 470,000, sorry, 480,000 is not good enough. We can't go with that answer just because it's close. And so it goes back to your human in the loop. Everybody wants productivity gains, but you can't afford in critical decision making. You can't afford the errors because everyone will look to you to ask you how it happened. So it calls for this judgment, and the judgment that you all get through the experience in your respective fields will make the difference between whether these tools are used appropriately or used in a sloppy fashion, and then we have bad results, which of course nobody wants to have. So no other chat source questions or anything? Well, we have a minute or two left. Anyone from the panel want to make a comment on something that occurred to them during the course of this hour that they would just like to leave as a final statement?
We have one question.
Yes. So what's the business continuity plan for AI? When someone becomes deeply reliant upon it, I just left my chat bubble. When someone becomes deeply reliant on it, and then it breaks, what does the plan look like after it breaks? And I know we're doing this in real time, but what would you suggest? What are the things that people have to keep in mind?
Yeah, I think that this is a very real question that's being brought up, because we see a lot of people growing up with this now, and they're becoming overly reliant, and they're experiencing what I would call similar to a withdrawal effect, similar withdrawal to any other type of over-reliance or addiction. I think this of course, this is a new effect, right, on the population right now. And I don't think too many people have very clear answer to this, I would say. And a lot of people are trying to figure out what to do with this. That's the best I know of it.
And we read some of these stories where one approach, I'm not saying it's the best approach, is that and people struggle to realize to explain how Gen AI tools do what they do. And so one legal position is, let's give them a special legal status like we would a human being, So if they make a mistake, we can point the fingers at the tool as opposed to the operator. I'm not fully comfortable with that, but some people are advocating that as a way around it. And but yes, when stuff breaks, as it will, because at the end of the day, it's hardware, software, and humans. Doesn't matter what technology it is. One has to be prepared, just as the person asked in the chat. One has to be prepared for that in advance, as opposed to it happens. We never thought this would happen. What do we do now? Because that's the wrong time to be figuring it out.
Yes, exactly. Thank you, Benjamin and Steve. If I want to I would like just to add some sentence about the Dennis
Sure.
questions. As long as I know that there are also several different techniques in the different organization, or if for the academic pursuit. So one of them is that once we got this result that we have the machine learning or large language model that it trained already and it's in the good situation. So we will make a backup of that, and it's like we put a version name for that. If we face with a situation that our models bias with anything that the Dennis is asking this question, so we can, it's like a rolling back to the previous version that we think that it is the stable. It's one of the way. Another way is that, for example, we can have the copy of the models in another server, in another data centers. It would be like a dual system that working together simultaneously. And if one of the systems, if one of the models is working on the server or in the, in the endpoint, it will be damaged or biasing. It will have a biased result. So we will migrate to the another backup version that we have. Yeah.
That's great. It's great. I'm glad to hear all of you are thinking 3 steps ahead, because it's an important thing in your profession. So you already have the right positioning. So I think our time is up, and I'd like to thank our panelists. I enjoyed listening to you. You're all very insightful, and I look forward to crossing paths with you again, because I'm sure we could learn from each other. And I want to thank everyone that joined us today for this. And Erica, any final comments?
Absolutely. Thanks everyone for coming out. Pretty soon, I think November 17th and November 19th, we will have panel discussions virtual coming from the College of Computing about how to explore your future in cybersecurity and how to explore your future in AI. We are looking at career preparation, internship opportunities. The dean will be moderating, and we have business experts and all kind of folks in the field. So please stay tuned for that. You will have information coming to you via your email. And also you can reach out to me if you have any questions about any of the wonderful programs that were mentioned today. Thanks to the panelists. We are so proud to have you all as PhD candidates here.
Bye, everyone. See you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Hold on 1 second. Okay, hi everyone. Are you all still here?
Yep.
Yes,
Are we still
Erica, we are
gonna
on
keep the
still here.
recording going?
No, just a second.
No worries.
It's okay.